Count 5. Say it, Tom. Say it. I'll kill your kids. I'll kill your kids. I'll kill your kids, Tom. I'll kill your kids. Jesus, Willie. I know you're gonna have a tough time explaining this to Wilhelmina. Oh, this ain't about no Wilhelmina. This about Willie Turner. Willie, we're gonna have to let you go. Oh, no, the fuck you didn't. Oh, I know. You ain't finna let Willie Turner. Oh, don't nobody let Willie Turner go. That's bullshit. All right, fuck it. Give me a check. Give me a check. Give me my check.
Steve Harvey. Yeah, so anyway, I got let go from my quote-unquote dream job. So let's talk about it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Tunji's podcast. I am your host, Tunji Taylor Lewis. So before I get anything started, let me say this. I have been salivating at the opportunity to do this episode for about like a month now. I've been imagining what this episode of the podcast would look like, what the title would be, exactly what I would talk about, because it's based on real circumstances of my life. For those of you who are watching this on live, I got let go from my job. Right now it's 1 p.m. On a Monday, which is when I'm recording this. Normally I'm only able to record these podcasts after work, around 6 p.m., 6:30, 7 p.m., something like that. But I got no work today. I'm here. And I found out that I was being let go from my job about a month ago. It was crazy because being fired, I wasn't fired, but I was let go. So being let go from my job was not my worst experience at that job. Like, it was definitely one of the most trying parts of that job. It was definitely one of the most difficult things to process about that job. But it definitely wasn't the worst part about that job. This job, if you guys remember, like about 6 months ago, I put it out there that, I got this job. It was my dream job. I was super excited, all this stuff. It was exactly what I wanted to do. I was in an entertainment production company. It was going to lead to the stuff I wanted to do in the future. I was really, really excited. I haven't looked back on that episode yet, but that was basically around the stuff that I was excited about. Cut to 6 months later, and it was absolutely by far the worst job experience that I have ever had in my life. I was doing some episodes over the past couple months where I was like super moody, super mad at the world, super unhappy with just like certain things of life, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of it had to do with the stuff that I was experiencing at this job. It really, really made me realize how fucked up the entertainment industry can be sometimes. It really, really made me realize how being a good person, how wanting to do the right things, how wanting to do things for the, the integrity of, I don't want to use like a super out there word, but like for the integrity of the art. When I say integrity of the art, I mean actually doing something to produce the best work, as opposed to doing stuff for politics or doing stuff to please, stockholders or members. Like wanting to do stuff that will actually produce like the best thing for the viewer. That makes you a little bit different from everybody else in the industry. Yeah, it was just like a bunch of like wild stuff, obviously, race and gender are always an element in the workplace. I'm not going to go out there and say that I dealt with any, overt racism in my workplace, but like there were just like certain there was certainly things about that job that I saw, that I observed, that were like very, very difficult to call out, because I was the only black person in the space, where it was like the vast majority of the workspace was, actually blonde white women. Funny enough, I don't know why they were all blonde, but they were mostly white women, and most of them were blonde of the white women. And I was certainly the only black person, let alone the only black man, in that room. Yeah, man, it was absolutely the worst, most stressful, most frustrating job experience that I have ever had. And being let go from this job was just the icing on the cake, man. I gotta tell you, like, it was just the cherry on top. Like, there were many, many times when I would, like, call my parents, close friends, certainly a lot of talks with my girlfriend about how much like anguish I was going through because of the things that I was observing about this job. It was really, really a lot of frustration, and a lot of pain, because I was observing, just like sort of like the messed up ways that people think, and the messed up ways that people see human beings, especially in the entertainment industry. When actors or performers are, for example, being casted for a show, or being casted for some internet content, which was like, I was on the production side, right? So I was, really responsible for bringing in a lot of the cast, helping, to hire some of the young kids. We were like, hiring kids who were from ages, I want to say like 14 to 19 was about our age range that we were looking for. We were looking for kids 14 to 19 to create some content, some YouTube style content. And I sent out the notification that we were looking for kids, 14 to 19, to create some content for us. We had them come in and do some auditions for us, and my whole thing with the audition process was to make sure that these kids would be able to do were the best kids for the job, right? So the kids that would do the best job, right? They're able to think of something off their toes. They have a great presence on screen. If they ask to do something unexpected, how do they react to that? Stuff like that. And it was very, very frustrating to consistently come to my, I guess you can say, like, my supervisors with, like, my recommendations for who we should bring in, and to constantly have to fight against their biases towards these kids based on a variety of things, whether it was the way they, and like, a lot of it had to do with like the way they looked. A lot of it had to do with, how they, how they perceive that child, or like how they, prejudge that child before they give the child to even speak. It was very, very frustrating. And like, like I said before, racial and gender biases are always a play, and there was definitely a play with these kids, as far as like how my supervisors would perceive them. And I literally would have to fight, or to like debate and find a way to convince them to say, hey, no, but like, regardless of the way how they look, we should bring them in, because they're good at what they do, and they're going to be good at what at what we ask them to do. And if we bring them in, they're going to produce the best content. This became especially frustration when, you know what? Let me not even get into that one, because I'm gonna send myself somewhere that I don't want to go. But that was definitely a very, very infuriating part of my job, because I think it just made me realize just how much, how many barriers I was coming up against, as an actor in the entertainment industry. Why maybe I didn't get certain things that I felt like I deserve. I don't deserve anything. I don't want to even go there. I just felt like, man, is the reason, like, could I be further along than I am right now? Could I be getting more opportunities than I do right now? Because if this is the way that people are making decisions, if this is the way that people are making decisions, then have I been held back because of me being a black man? Like, these were real questions that I was asking, and the possibility of that, or like the really real reality of that, really sent me into a really dark place. As an actor, you always sense it. Whenever you go into an audition room, whenever you step out on stage as a black man, you always sense it. You always sense that people, if it's a white space, you definitely sense that people can see, oh, like, here's a black man. Whether they're racist or not, they have some biases in their brain that they don't even know about, and they really have to dig deep to get out. And you're pushing up against certain racial biases in order to get certain opportunities. Like a lot of black people always say, we have to be twice as good to get half the results, and that's sort of the mentality that I took on. But I guess the thing that really sent me into into somewhat of a dark place was the reality that there are people who actually put forth a good amount of work, put forth a good body of work, do the work to make sure that, despite the things that might be holding them back, that they are good candidates for the opportunity. And still in that case, certain decision makers won't give them that opportunity because they want to go for the person who's more conventionally good looking, or the person who's more quote unquote likable, which really just has more to do with looks and personal perceptions and stuff like that. Just like really bullshit reasons to hire somebody for an acting job that has nothing to do with whether or not the person can do the job. That call me naive, call me whatever, but to see that up close, to see that sort of bias up close, really just it was the most frustrating thing ever. It was the most absolutely frustrating isn't even the word. It was just the most painful thing to have to process. Especially, it was the first time I ever felt like quitting. It was like actually taking that in and actually seeing the reality of the situation and the reality of how the entertainment industry is. It really just, it made me feel like quitting, because I was just like, if this is what I'm up against, it might end up being a situation where it doesn't matter how hard I try, or it doesn't matter how much better I am than, my, privileged counterparts, who I'm not mad at, by the way, because everybody wants to get an opportunity. And if they're privileged in certain ways to get opportunities, everybody's going to take them. So I'm not mad at my privileged counterparts, or competition, as it were. But man, I just kind of felt like at that moment, man, it might not matter how hard I try. It may never happen for me, because, people might just see at the end of the day a black man at the end of the day, and it won't matter how good I actually am. Like I might not ever be able to, reach the heights in my career that I want to reach. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how talented I actually am. All they're going to see is a black man. And I really went there. I'm usually not that pessimistic. I'm usually a very optimistic person. I'm usually like a, we shall overcome type of person, happy MLK Day, everybody, by the way. But that's really the place that I went to, man. And like that. So this podcast is kind of long. I kind of just really just let loose and let the camera roll. I didn't worry about my usual 10-minute limit. So part 2 of this podcast will be dropped tomorrow. And thank you all so much for listening so far, or watching so far. Whatever you're doing, listening, watching. Thank you for doing it. Love y'all.